Okay, I want everyone to move up right front here like we're one happy family. And those of you who are left, I hope that you're going to enjoy the nectar, more nectar about His Divine Grace, Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Paribhajagacharya Sri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Oh. I have quite a few stories. I don't know how long you'll stay awake after this long day of coming here to this beautiful island in the association of so many wonderful devotees, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj and Mother Krishna Rupa and Patri Prabhu. I'll share some of my times with Srila Prabhupada. I could go on for a few hours, actually. Just like if you want to understand the ocean, you don't have to drink the whole ocean. You just take a drop, and with that drop, you can understand what ocean is like. So in the lifetime of Srila Prabhupada, even if we just get a little tidbit of nectar, we can all understand him better and increase our desire to love him and continue spreading his mission in this world. And if we can satisfy him by spreading his desires in this world, then maybe, just maybe, he'll bring us home and we can serve his desires in the spiritual world. One time we asked Srila Prabhupada, who are you? Mother Krishna Rupa was explaining we were quite neophyte, we didn't know much, but Prabhupada was so attractive. So we asked him, Srila Prabhupada, who are you in the spiritual world? He said, if I told you, you'd faint. If I told you, you'd faint. Hare Krishna. So Hare Krishna. Something significant about those lights going out, like the demigods are just, wow. So I joined, as I mentioned earlier, around 18 years of age. There's a whole history to that. But I was living in a temple in America in 1969 or 1970. We had a temple in a city called Detroit, Michigan. Have you ever heard of Detroit, Michigan? Yeah, we were there. Just a fledgling little center in those days. There weren't many centers. There was San Francisco, there was LA, there was Boston, and New York, of course, 26 Second Avenue. This was a fledgling center. And I joined and, came into the ashram and sleeping on the floor and taking a shower with 30 other men. And in those days, we didn't have much money. So breakfast, we put a piece of that plastic paper, wax paper on the ground. They put one thing of halava, some chickpeas, and tea. It was a little austere, but it was like nectar, because every day we'd go out on Sankirtan, we'd chant and dance for many, many hours in ecstasy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama. And we were hearing so much about Srila Prabhupada. As Mother Krishna Rupa was saying, in those days, everything was about Prabhupada, what he said, what he did, where he's going. And one day, by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we got the news that Prabhupada was going to come to our temple, our little temple with 30 devotees in Detroit. It reminded me of a verse by Shakespeare, that mercy, it falleth from heaven like a gentle rain upon those below. Causeless mercy, who were we, what had we done in our lives to deserve the association of an eternal resident of Vrindavan? I was just in awe, Prabhupada is going to come. And sure enough, he came one day. We greeted him at the Detroit airport. We brought him to the temple, and when he entered the temple, the devotees were lining the way into the temple room. And my god sister Krishna Bhamani, she was holding her, he was either a year and a half or maybe 2 years old son in her arms. And that little boy, he came to be known as Vaishnava, he had a little pair of kartals. He was playing like that. Everyone was looking at him with like, what's going on? This little boy's playing like some of you boys are playing now in 18 or 20. So Prabhupada walked by and he stopped and he looked at the boy and he patted him on the head. What a blessing. And then Prabhupada came into the temple room and he sat down to give class, but he didn't read a verse that day. He just began by saying that the unsuccessful yogi, if you don't complete the process of Krishna consciousness, it's okay. Because whatever you've done, it's an eternal blessing. And you begin your next life where you left off. So it's like this. It's not like materialistic person. He comes into this world naked and he leaves naked with nothing. Therefore, Krishna says there's no loss or diminution on this path. So Prabhupada said that the unsuccessful devotee, he takes birth again, but he takes birth in a family of transcendentalists. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, such a birth is very, very rare. And then Prabhupada looked at Krishna Bhamani and Vaishnava sitting in the corner, and he went like this. He said, so it's sure and certain this little boy had practiced Krishna consciousness in his previous life. And you should have seen the smile on Mother Krishna Bhamani's face. My little ray of Vishnu, my little boy, Prabhupada confirmed, like that. Anyway, Prabhupada stayed with us for 1 week, and we became so attached. There's Hari, there's Guru, and Vaishnava. And all those personalities are essential for our progress in Krishna consciousness. You take out one part of the formula and it doesn't work. So much as we adore Krishna, we adore his representative, the spiritual preceptor, and we adore the Vaishnavas. All of them together help us on the path of Krishna consciousness. So this was the first time I'd ever been with Prabhupada, and I became very attached. And the day Prabhupada was leaving, he came down the stairs from his room, very regal, like just always walking like Parivajakacharya, Paramahamsa. I sometimes wondered if his feet ever touched the ground. He would always walk so elegantly, so beautifully. And although at the end of his day, he had his sannyasi robes on, there wasn't one wrinkle. I could never figure it out. How did Prabhupada do that? And he always smelled like sandalwood. He's definitely a resident of Vrindavan. He came floating down the stairs, very regal, out the door, and I thought, I want to make some contact with him. So I ran upstairs into my room, and I had a piece of paper and a pen there, and I wrote, Dear Srila Prabhupada, thank you so much for coming to see us in Detroit. I'm going to miss you. I had hoped I could get initiated, but I've only been here a few months. And then I said, I'm including $10, it's all the money I had in the world, $10 for your newly created book fund. I didn't know what it was, but I heard about it. And then I said, P.S., I miss you. I miss you. Put it in an envelope. And then I ran downstairs, and Prabhupada was just getting in the car to go to the airport. And I was so excited, but neophyte young boy. And I called out, Srila Prabhupada, wait! And like the whole neighborhood heard me. People were looking out their windows, and the devotees were like, what? And Prabhupada was just about to get in the car, and he just turned around, and he said, okay, come on. So I came, and the devotees parted, and I came up, and I was so nervous. I was always nervous in front of Prabhupada because he was such a grandiose person. So I said, so I said, Srila Prabhupada, I wrote you a letter. He said, thank you very much. What's your name? Bhakti Brian. I was so embarrassed. I wanted to say, Krishna Das or Madhu Mangal Das or something. Bhakti Brian. So he smiled. He looked straight into my heart. This was something about Prabhupada. When he looked at you, you could tell that he was looking in your heart. He knew exactly who you were and what you needed. One time he said to one of my godbrothers, we were in Geneva, he said, looking at him very directly, he said, if I revealed to you how many material desires you have in your heart, you would faint. He was very kind, because Guru has to remove the material desires so that we can awaken our spiritual desires. So Prabhupada put the letter in his pocket. He had a silk kirtan. He put it in his pocket, drove away. And we all paid dandavats. And we were running after the car, actually. And then falling down in the middle of the street, there was 200 devotees flat. In those days, even the ladies sometimes paid full obeisances. And all the cars had to stop. And all the people looking out the window, who are these Hare Krishnas lying down, mumbling on the ground? Prabhupada drove on. So I thought at least I made contact with my spiritual master. And then 2.5 weeks later, an aerogram arrived from India. And in those days, Prabhupada would, he'd buy this aerogram and he would either type or he'd write in his own handwriting a letter. And in those days, because the movement was still quite small, he would write personal letters to you. The temple president would get a few, or the temple commander. And, I thought, Bhakti Brian, I'll never get a letter. But, so what would happen when the letter would arrive in the mail, the temple commander would blow the conch. Boom! 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 And that meant a letter from Prabhupada had arrived. Everyone had to congregate downstairs in the temple room. So we came running, like the gopis running when Krishna plays his flute under the autumn moon in the forests of Vrindavan. So much affection we had. And we ran into the temple room. We all sat down. I sat in the back because, Bhakti Brian's not going to get a letter. And then the thing was that whoever got the letter, they had to read it out loud. Sometimes that was a little awkward because Prabhupada would be chastising that devotee, and then everybody would know. But sometimes it was the opposite. So the temple commander, so this month we have a letter from His Divine Grace, Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Bhardibhajacharya Sri Srimad Shri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Everyone's looking. And it is addressed to Bhakti Brian. And I'm in the back, and I didn't hear it. I mean, I wasn't expecting it. I thought maybe someone's calling my name to come in the kitchen. Bhakti Brian, Prabhupada has wrote you a letter. What? Wow. And I stood up, a brand new bhakta, my head was just shaved, a few cups of blood here, in the old days like that. My dhoti had holes in it. It's just somebody's previous dhoti and some shawl. And I stood, and then I'm in the middle of the room, and he said, read the letter. So it was the dearest thing to my heart to receive some recognition from my guru, from my spiritual master. So I opened the letter. Dear Bhakti Brian, please accept my blessings. I'm in due receipt of your letter dated, I forget what it was, November something, 1969. And I was very happy to hear from you. I have information from the temple authorities that you're doing very nice in Krishna consciousness. Someone had told Prabhupada I was doing nice. Thank you, whoever those Prabhus were. I heard you're doing very nice in Krishna consciousness. And I know you wanted to take initiation, but please be patient. Continue to chant 16 rounds a day. Follow the 4 regulative principles. And surely, in due course of time, I will accept you as my duly initiated disciple. That was almost like initiation for me, because Prabhupada had accepted me in his heart, and I had accepted him in my heart for eternal bond of seva to the Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the divine couple and Sri Vrindavan Dham. And then he said, "You're ever well-wisher," and he had this beautiful, he was all in his handwriting, this beautiful signature, A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami. I always thought if I ever get a tattoo, I'm not into tattoos, but if I got a tattoo, it'd be Srila A.C. Bhaktivinoda. And then I was about to close it up, and I noticed a postscript. You know how we do? I don't know if you do, of course, now everything's on the internet, but in the old days, PS means postscript. You wanted to say something you didn't say earlier. Prabhupada said, "I can understand your feelings of separation because I am also missing my spiritual master. He departed many years before, but I always feel he's watching over and protecting me. And that's eternally enshrined in my heart, He said, I understand your feelings of separation. My Guru Maharaj has departed, but I always feel he's watching over and protecting me." This just opened up a new chapter of Krishna consciousness for me. That just as Prabhupada's spiritual master was guiding him in his devotional service, in some way, Krishna makes the arrangement. It's very mystical. So Srila Prabhupada would also guide me throughout my life. If I followed the straight and narrow and I chanted every day, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And I put that letter away. I'd bring it out sometimes and I'd read it. And then I stored it away carefully for some time. And then, of course, Prabhupada eventually passed away. It was a great tragedy for all of us. We didn't know how we'd go on, how the movement would go on, etc. And I remember that letter. So we received the news one day. I was in the kitchen, I think, and I excused myself. And I went upstairs and I took the letter out. I read the postscript. "I can understand your feelings of separation. My Guru Maharaj has departed this world, but I always feel that he's watching over and protecting me." And I cried like a baby for the rest of the day. Simultaneously happy for Srila Prabhupada that he rejoined his beloved Lord in the spiritual world, but missing him. But even in his absence, I knew he would be watching over and protecting me. And I feel this to the very day. So wonderful. So time went on. Before Prabhupada departed, he asked if some devotees could go to Europe and open new centers. Of course, this is way before he departed, but I just added that so you could understand. I think maybe a year after he left Detroit, he sent a letter to the temple president that if one or two boys could come open a center in Paris, France. Now, bear in mind, this is like 9 months. I think I've been a devotee 9 months. And by that time, I was initiated. And temple president said, "So Prabhupada wants someone to go to France to open a center." Everybody went like, I went, "I want to go." Because I thought that'd be an adventure, serving my spiritual master, a challenge to show him how much I appreciated his mercy. I'll go somewhere like he did and open a center, I was thinking. So I raised my hand. Everyone looked at me like, "You're going to go to Europe?" In those days, it was a big thing. And the temple president said, "What's your qualification?" So I told a white lie because I really wanted the job. I said, "Well, I've been to Europe and I've traveled around. I was in Paris and I was in London and I was there and I know the ropes." He said, "Okay, you can go." I went, "Oh my God. Je parle pas français." I don't speak French. I said, "Anyway, I'll go." So me and one other devotee, another devotee was chosen, and we heard, Prabhupada wanted us to go as quickly as possible. He was always on a sense of urgency to spread Krishna consciousness. So, I heard Prabhupada was also going to Europe. So I phoned up the temple in New York where Prabhupada, I knew he was there, and I talked to his secretary. And I said, can you tell me what flight Prabhupada's on that day? What's the time and what seat number he's in? Now you get the idea? So he told me, and I called. In those days, you could call the airport directly, and you get a connection with the representative. I think it was TWA or something in those days, or Pan Am or something. And the lady answered the phone, yes, sir, or yes, young man. I said, can you get me a seat on this flight on this day with the seat number? She said, young man, the flight is booked. It's overbooked. We have 100 people waiting for someone to call in that they can't go. I'm sorry. And I was devastated. I said, no, I have to go. Why? For my spiritual master. And nobody knew India, yoga, meditation, vegetarian, a little bit because of the hippie movement. But she said, what kind of master? I said, a spiritual master. She said, I know someone who masters, mathematics or masters science. Or what's a spiritual master? I said, he's like Jesus. So she said, oh, Jesus. Why do you want? Because I said, Jesus is going to take that plane to London. She says, you have so much faith in your religion. I do, ma'am. Can you get me a seat? She said, I'm sorry, you can't go with Jesus. I'm sorry. But in the background, the superintendent, over here, came and said to her, one person has canceled, so the 100 persons on the waiting list, put them on. She said, okay. Then she told a white lie. She was supposed to put the person who was 100 on the list. She said, boy, you can travel with Jesus. I'll give you the seat. So sure enough, I got the seat. I got the seat. She said, what seat do you want? I said, could you look? There's someone called A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. She said, well, what kind of name is that? I said, it's just some official name he has, my priest. So she said, oh yes, S-W-A-M-I, Swami. She said, the seat that was vacated is sitting right next to him. Hare So, she said, I give you the seat. I was over the moon. I'm going to sit next to Prabhupada for 6 hours on the way to London. So I went to New York, and we spent a few days there. And with Prabhupada, again, he was lecturing. I could only see him from a distance, of course, in those days. And the day came for the flight. And I had my ticket, I had my passport, everything. And then everyone was going to rush. In those days, everyone would go to the airport, like 20 cars or something. We'd invade the airport. But there was a lot of traffic. So Prabhupada's secretary put him in a particular car and said, everyone was rushing in the cars, but he wanted someone also to be there to help with Prabhupada's luggage. So he said to me, can you get in the car and go to the airport with us? I said, I'll get in the airport and I'll go much further. I'm going to London with Srila Prabhupada. So we got to the airport, and because of all the traffic, the devotees were all far behind us. And even the people, there were, just people milling about. So I went with Prabhupada to, immigration. We gave our passports, etc., like that. And then we walked together. I just couldn't believe my good fortune. I'm walking with the pure devotee of the Lord from Sri Vrindavan Dham. I'm walking. And then we get to the customs, or the security there. And they want to check all your bags. So we get to the security officer. Sorry, I have a cold. And Prabhupada used to carry this little white attaché case. And I noticed in that time I'd been with him in Detroit and New York, no one could touch it. He didn't have the confidence that, because all his valuables were in there. So he didn't have the confidence to give it to anybody. So he's carrying it, and the officer says, "On the table, sir." I didn't like the way he spoke to Prabhupada. So Prabhupada put the white attaché case on the table, and the officer said, "Open it." But somehow the locks didn't click, and Prabhupada was having trouble, and the man said, "Open it." So I looked at the security officer. I leaned over and I said, "Sir, if you speak to my spiritual master like that one more time, I'm going to break your face." There were 3 cops, right? "I'm going to break your face." Prabhupada went, "Oh." And then, so the officer said, "I thought you, Hare Krishna, was a nonviolent." I said, "Just try me." Young and bold and take any risk. So then the officer said, "Okay, then you open it." I got this big smile on my face because we all wondered. We never knew. Prabhupada kept it very confidential. We didn't know what was in that white attaché case. So I looked at Prabhupada and he went, and I didn't know if that meant yes or no. I still don't know what it means. I took my chances. And I went, and it opened. And it was right there with me. And I looked inside. Believe me, it was like looking in Krishna's mouth, and you could see the universe and the planets and the stars and everything. I looked in there was Prabhupada's passport. And it was open to the page. And there was his photo. And then it said, name. He wrote A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami in his own handwriting. Town or city where you live, he wrote Vrindavan, and it said occupation. And I looked away from it and I was thinking, what would Prabhupada write for his occupation? Because he's a sannyasi. He's given up all those material designations. He's just a wandering Parivajikacharya Paramahansa of the Lord. What would he write as his occupation? Do you want to hear what he wrote? Servant of His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So nowadays, whenever I have to write my occupation, I write servant of A.C. Bhakti. Sometimes they say, "What does that mean?" I said, "I have the most glorious occupation. I'm the servant of a glorious master." They go like, "Okay, get out, go on." So then and then there were kartals, and there was some balm there. He would put for say, there was forget what you call that for the tobacco, and there was some snuff. It's tobacco. I thought we're not supposed to take intoxication, but I learned later Prabhupada would take a little bit when he was doing his translations late at night, just a little bit so he could stay awake. I thought Prabhupada's so practical. And what else was in there? There was a few rupees. Prabhupada was in America. What's he carrying rupees for? But he had a few rupees and things like that. And then, so the security guard says, "I'm supposed to look at it, not you, young man. Turn it around." I went, "Thank you, Krishna." So then we started walking to the plane because, other passengers were just, I don't know where they were. They were far behind. I'm walking with Prabhupada on the tamarack because it was a big plane, but in those days we would walk like that. And Prabhupada turned to me, he said, "These rascals, they have no good qualities because they are covered by the modes of nature. Do you understand, Indradyumna?" And I was so nervous that Prabhupada was speaking to me, I went, So we walked a little further. He said, "Indradyumna, because of their material desires, they are covered over. They have no good qualities. Do you understand?" And then just before we're going to go up the steps to the plane, he stops and he turns, looks at me. "Do you understand? I'm telling you." 3rd time. They have no good qualities because they have so many sinful habits. Therefore, their spiritual senses are covered. Do you understand? And I understood. It became very clear to me that materialistic people, because of their bad qualities, they have no good character, they can't appreciate a pure devotee, they can't understand anything spiritual. Of course, in due course of time, if they get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. But I understood. And I looked, I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, I understand. And I was always thinking, in Vedic culture, if you want the student to understand something, you say it 3 times in the Gurukul, 3 times. And almost mystically, I experienced that. I actually felt, yeah, there's a big difference between devotees and, I was young, between devotees and non-devotees. One time, Prabhupada, he gave my Godbrother Satsvarup Maharaj his danda. When he took, Prabhupada gave his danda when he was giving him sannyas. And he said something really important. He said, Satsvarup Maharaj, never look back and think that you've left anything valuable behind, and never envy the position of the materialistic sense enjoyers. So it was something like that for me. I never looked back. I never had any doubts after that. I never had any confusion. I never envied anybody. It was just sadhu sangha, sava shrishta koi, lavamatra sadhu sangha, sava siddhi hoy. One moment's association with the devotee of the Lord, if you're really eager for it, if you want to imbibe it, can have a powerful effect. Even on a young boy like me who didn't know anything. I still don't know anything. Anyway, we got on a plane, right? Everybody else came. Everyone sat down. And the plane took off, and I was sitting next to Prabhupada. I think 6 hours, oh my God, Krishna, thank you. I was trying to learn French. So, merci beaucoup. So then the plane took off, and we're flying, and about an hour into the flight, Prabhupada's chanting, Hare Krishna, Ram Ram, Chindamani, the whole time, he was completely fixed on Krishna. He'd look out the window, and, Chindamani, Pakarasadamasu, Gopa, Viksha, Lakshaviti, Hare Krishna, Daigo, Dani Dai. The whole time, it was mesmerizing. I wished I'd had a tape recorder. At one point, Prabhupada turned to me, he said, so, Indradyumna, prasadam? Excuse me, Prabhupada? Where's the prasadam? Now, I learned later what had happened is some devotees were supposed to come with prasadam, kichoris, samosas, and things like that for Prabhupada. But they didn't make it to the airport because of the traffic. But somebody had given me a bag of oranges. And I thought, well, okay, I'll take the oranges. Maybe they'll be useful somewhere on the trip. And I had the oranges by my side here. And I said, Prabhupada, there's no prasadam. He said, oh. I said, but Prabhupada, I have some oranges. He said, oh, very nice. You cut them, and then you give them to me. So there was maybe 4 oranges. So I asked, in those days you could get a knife from the stewardess. I got a knife and I cut them into quarters. I asked for a plate. She bought me a plate. And then, I was actually shaking. I put it in front of Prabhupada. I said, Your Divine Grace, this is your prasadam. He said, Hare Krishna. So then he started sucking on the, how would you call it? Yeah, like that. He was making a big noise. And I was, kind of the passengers are looking. Prabhupada didn't care. He was relishing Krishna's, because I offered it to him. I'm not offered to Krishna. Wait, I offered it to my guru. So he was, we should take prasadam not because it's good food, but because it's Krishna's mercy. It's his mercy. It's a form of his mercy. So we honor prasadam. And Prabhupada was honoring it. He was enjoying it, but I could understand that he's saying he's thinking this is Krishna's mercy. So he finished all the rind, all the peels, and they were on the plate. So then he looks at me. So, Indradyumna, are you going to take prasad? And again, I was so young, naive. I said, well, no, Prabhupada, because you ate everything. So Prabhupada said, no, Maha Prasad. The remnants of the sadhu, the dust that's touched his feet, or the water that's washed his feet, are all great inspiration for spiritual advancement. Like quantum leap, you know that term in math? A quantum leap. You get some dust from the foot of a pure devotee. You get the water that's washed his feet. You get the remnants of his plate. Boom. So I thought, wow, Maha Prasadam. So I took the thing, and I didn't want to use the same plate. I thought that would be offensive. So I asked the lady for another plate. She said, why do you want another plate? Everything's gone. I said, ma'am, it's a long story. So I took the peels off of Prabhupada's plate, put them on a new plate, and gave her the plate like that. So then I was just so overwhelmed, I took the orange peel and started to eat them. Like, and you know, have you ever bit into an orange peel? You said, oh, bitter. I started, tears were coming out. I think I ate 5. And I looked over at Prabhupada, he was like this. So, he said, not like that. So I just sucked on what was left. You know. And then the lady came to take the rind, you know. I said, don't touch it. She said, well, what are you going to do with it? I put it in my pocket. And I got all wet. She's like, you're crazy, boy. I said, you just don't understand. It's a long story. She said, you have a lot of long stories, young man. So then the flight took off. I mean, it had taken off, and we had this little pastime. And then the movie came on. The movie, in those days, there was no movie on the back seats, you know. So the movie, you know, everybody's pulling down the blinds and, you know, putting their headphones on, everything like that. So I think I'm sitting next to Prabhupada. I'm going to show him that I don't watch movies. So I had this Bhagavad Gita. In those days, the Bhagavad Gita was quite big, and Prabhupada's right there, and I put it in front. Dehi nosmin yata dehe, homanam yovanam jara, tata tayantaras paptir. Dearest, Prabhupada's watching the movie. I put the book down and I watched the movie. But it was a silent movie of Charlie Chaplin. Nothing, it was all good humor. So we watched the movie, Prabhupada's laughing. I'm, So then it finished, and I asked Srila Prabhupada, I said, Your Divine Grace, can I ask you a question? So I said, I thought we weren't supposed to watch movies. He said, yes. He said, I said, but you were watching. He said, no, you don't understand. Krishna is the source of everything original. And I was watching Charlie Chaplin. His humor was very original. So I was seeing Krishna, young man. What were you seeing? And when Prabhupada was young, he used to watch those silent films, you know, the Charlie Chaplin. It's just simple humor like that. Anyway, Prabhupada didn't sleep the whole way. He chanted the whole way. I dozed off and on. And sometimes I wake up and he'd be looking at me, Hare Krishna. And we arrived in London. And the plane taxied, and we got out, and we went through the formalities and everything. And then we waited at the carousel for the baggage. And all the bags came. But then Prabhupada's secretary, Indradyumna, who was also on the flight, he said, Srila Prabhupada, the bag with all your books is missing. Because Prabhupada would travel with, you know, commentaries of different acharyas in order to write his ecstasies, his purports. Books by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, by his Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, Vrindavan Das Thakur, Vishwanath Baladev, all these books, that's where Prabhupada would get the knowledge. He often said, I didn't invent anything new. I've just presented it as it is, Bhagavad Gita as it is. So that bag was missing. It was a big bag. I remember when we checked in, it took me and somebody else to put it on the scale. It wasn't there. So Prabhupada said, we will go to the temple, but someone has to stay and wait for the bag. I hid behind a pillar. I wanted to go to the London temple. I'd heard about it, Seven Bury Place. Shamasundar had built it like, I don't know, like a boat or something, actually. And Jagannath and Subhadra were pretty high up, and then there were, I think, Gaurita. I can't remember what the deities were then. Actually, it was Radha Parasishwara. No, excuse me, Radha London Ishwara. They were down and Jagannath was up there. I'd seen the photos, and I heard that Jamuna was going to cook the feast. You know Jamuna? She's the famous cook that was trained by Prabhupada. She wrote that particular cookbook, which all the girls should read and learn all the recipes so we keep our tradition. And I heard the Beatles were going to be there. So, I still had a few material desires, and I wanted to meet John Lennon and Ringo and, Paul McCartney and George Harrison, and be there for Prabhupada's kirtan and his lecture. So I hid behind the pillar, and Prabhupada's looking around. So that young boy, Indradyumna shall stay. What? But I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, if it's your desire. Because Prabhupada told us one time, along with the instruction of the spiritual master comes the ability to fulfill it. So I took, okay, if you want me to jump off the bridge, whatever you want, I'll do, Srila. I have full trust in you. So I waited, they left, make a long story short, 2.5 hours later, they found the bag. Oh my God. And I was angry at that bag. You bag? I hope that wasn't an offense. So I dragged it. It was so heavy. I dragged it to the taxi. And it was raining. It was cold. We didn't eat the airport. Probably didn't eat the whole flight. And I didn't. I just, chewed on some orange peels. And we didn't eat the airport food. Prabhupada wouldn't eat it. He did say, however, that any food that is cooked in the dham, like in Mayapur or Vrindavan, even not your own family, it's in a stall, it's in a restaurant, somebody's cooking at home. He said any food that's cooked in the dham is to be considered offered. I was shocked. Any food that's cooked in the dham is to be considered, he said that. Hare Krishna. So anyway, took that bag, got in the taxi, cold, hungry. It was raining, and they have these funny taxis in London, and put the bag in, and I got in the back seat. Oh. So the driver, he looked behind, he said, young man, is something wrong? You look like you got out of the wrong side of the bed this morning. What's the problem? I said, it's a long story. So we drove through the London traffic. Maybe there'll be some of the feast left cooked by Mother Jamuna. And we got to Seven Bury Place. It's next to the British Museum. And I got out and I paid him. I didn't have any pounds. I had dollars, but he took dollars. And then I dragged that suitcase up the stairs and opened the door to the temple. And you open the door, you're in the temple room. And I look around, there's like 100 devotees, and they're all leaning against the wall. Oh, that was such a good feast. And and you see the plates, the streaks of fingers through the ghee on the plates, there wasn't a drop left. And I said, Prabhus, is there any prasadam left? Look at him, who are you? Why are you late? I looked at the bag. And I said, is there any? No, there's nothing left. It was the best feast that Jamuna ever cooked. Oh. So I said, okay, look, I've been on a flight, come a long way. Can you help me carry this bag to Prabhupada's room? Oh, we can't move an inch. And thank God they couldn't. Because I carried that bag up. I was young. I was a strong man at that time. Up the boom. In England, they have everything small. and I backed up, and the stairs went like this, you can imagine, 4 stories. And I got to this level, and I looked to the right, and there was a door. It had a brass plaque on it. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Well, that's Prabhupada's room. So but I was tired, and I didn't observe the proper etiquette. I should have knocked, waited for a reply, either from Prabhupada's servant or him, and then if I got a reply, open the door and bring the bag in backwards. A young boy, naive, I opened the door and I dragged the bag in backwards, And as I'm going into Prabhupada's room, which appeared to me to be like heaven on earth, Prabhupada's servant, Nanda Kumar, he said, "Hey, watch out, you're going to bump into Srila Prabhupada." And I froze. And I turned around and, I'm quite tall, 6'1". Prabhupada, he was short stature, Bengali. But I turned around. He was standing there in his gamsha, a white and pink gamsha. And I get this wave of sandalwood came that I was somewhat familiar with. And I swear he was shining like the sun. And Prabhupada was standing there, and I was like, he seemed like a giant to me. And I thought, I'm standing before my spiritual man. I could see his whole form. In fact, on my altar, I have a picture of Prabhupada in that gamsha chanting Gayatri. He has no shirt on, and that's because that memory it's seared in my consciousness, thank God. It's a samskara. And that I have a photo of Prabhupada on my altar. So when I do before I offer to my deities, I offer a picture of Prabhupada. So I bowed down, boom, on the ground. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Namaste. Whack! A slap on my back. So hard. Now that's another tattoo. People get crazy cat. If I'd have that Prabhupada's hand, I wish, maybe I'll do it before I die. And the Yamadutas come, can't take him, he's got Prabhupada's hand on his back. And then Prabhupada said something. But I was so nervous, I thought I was being chastised, but it was a really hard slap. Really hard. And I thought I'd done something wrong. So then I waited for a few moments, and Prabhupada, his feet turned, and he left, and I could hear the door close. He had gone for his massage. So I stood up, and Nanda Kumar was like right there where Maharaj is, and he was like this. I said, "What happened?" He said, "Prabhupada slapped you on the back." He said, "I never saw him do that to anyone before." I went, "Really?" I was still hurt. But then I remembered that Prabhupada had said something to me. So I said, "What did Prabhupada say?" And Nanda Kumar said, "Oh, so wonderful." I said, What? Prabhupada told you, so much endeavor in this material world, but when I take you back home, back to Godhead, everything will be easy and sublime. Srila Prabhupada ki. Now, what an acharya says like that to one disciple, it can be taken for all disciples. So much endeavor in this world, but when we go back to Godhead, he said, everything will be easy and sublime. So I took it, as a traveling preacher, going to different countries, sometimes in dangerous or drastic situations, sometimes it's too hot, sometimes it's cold. We've been attacked on Harinam with knives and, the government's opposing us in some countries, et cetera, et cetera. I just go through it, tolerating it, thinking, yes, Prabhupada told me, so much endeavor. to spread a spiritual movement in the material world is like a carpenter going against the grain. They have that saying. He's cutting the wood, and the grain's like that, not like this, so it's very difficult. So to spread a spiritual movement in the material world can be very challenging, and I've had that challenge for 54 years now. But every time there's a challenge, I just close my eyes. So much endeavor in this material world, but when I take you back to Godhead, everything will be easy and sublime. So you can also take that to heart. So the next day, Prabhupada called me to his room, he had a little office. And he said to me, "So you're going to France?" Yeah. And he could tell I was nervous. You're going to France, he said. So I said, "But Prabhupada, I don't speak French." He said, "So?" Like, what? So? You make a French person who speaks English into a devotee, and then you use that person as your translator. It sounded like, oh, yeah, of course. Why didn't I think like that, So then, but Prabhupada could see I was nervous, and he was asking this and that. And he said, "You've been to France?" And I said, "No." I couldn't lie to my guru. So then I was nervous. He said, "All right." Then he reached over into there was like a little closet, and he pulled out a chadar. Pulled out like this, silk chadar. And he gave it to me. Yeah, he gave it to me. And he said, Indradyumna, a present from a Vaishnava is a very special thing. And what greater personality, Krishna's dearest one, who come to this world on the request of Krishna, so surrendered Prabhupada was. And a Brajbasi without doubt. And he gave me his chadar. It was saffron, but I was in white. I was married at that time, actually, married. And he gave it to me. And I wore that chadar till it became threadbare. That term, it was just threadbare. And sometimes the sannyasis would come through Paris, like Guru Kripa and Yashodanandana. They'd see me in that chadar. "Hey, you're a grihastra. You can't wear saffron. Take it off." I go like this, I say. Srila Prabhupada gave me this chadar. Just try to take it off. And even Guru Kripa would back off. He was a tough guy. You just try to take it off me. And finally, I gave it to Jamuna and what was her god sister she traveled with? Dinatarini. They were having a museum because I couldn't wear it anymore. I gave it to their museum like that. So then Prabhupada, he said, "So France?" I said, "France." He kind of appreciated that. So then he leaned over and he gave me my mission statement. Like sometimes a person will make a mission statement, like I'm not just going to dilly-dally around this and that. I'm going to say what I want to do in life. This is, I'm going to be humanitarian, I'm going to be a businessman, a politician. I'm going to do it. So Prabhupada gave me my mission statement. He leaned over and he said, over the desk, he said, "So Indradyumna, you preach boldly and you have faith in the holy names." And he said it twice. You preach boldly and you have faith in the holy. Like, if Jesus or someone a priest opens his heart, there's Jesus. Or if Hanuman opens his heart, there's Ram. If you open my heart, the doctors are going to be shocked. There'll be that inscription in my heart: preach boldly and have faith in the holy names. I don't think of anything else. And of course, that's a very broad instruction. And I've taken it in many ways. Actually, when my initiation letter actually arrived just before I left, my initiation, the formal initiation letter, Prabhupada encouraged me to do festivals. Why did you do festivals? Go to the university. Like, I still have that letter too. So I thought, preach boldly. It's not easy to go out in material society and who have very little interest in spiritual life, which they consider to be, a ritualist activity on Sundays or Fridays or Saturday. Our religion is, congregational chanting, chanting loudly, dancing, singing, smiling, twirling, some deep philosophy to make sense of it all, and delicious prasadam. I consider that bold preaching to go into, like to go into Broadway with the Hare Krishna festival. And actually, we're about to do that now. I'll tell you about that later. We've developed over 35 years a very high cultural, professional, pucka, high class event, and we're taking it to London in September, and we've already booked the halls and sold the tickets. It's going to be so preach boldly. I went to the Amazon jungle. I spent 6 months there. God knows how I got out alive. I went to Sarajevo after the Balkans War, when people were still being buried. We did kirtan through the streets. I went to Russia, 1988, when it was full-on communist. I went again a few weeks ago. Kind of nostalgia to go back, and I have disciples there. And somehow or other, when I was doing an event like this, the KGB came, and they arrested me and put me in jail for a week. They took everything off me. They gave me a cloth like a gumshoe, that's all I had, and put me in a cell that was freezing cold with bright lights and music blaring day and night. I could go to the bathroom once a day, and they'd throw a slab of meat for me to eat, which I didn't eat. Fortunately, one of my disciples came, Shardiya Rasa, and she sneaked some food in the night. It was very austere, and I had to go to trial. The prosecution, the defense, the judge, he looked like a Yamaduta. Oh. And it was already decided. I was a guinea pig. They didn't want foreigners coming in anymore. So the case was decided. Stand up, prisoner. You're guilty of what, Your Honor? Preaching another religion in this country. So then he said, you have 2 years imprisonment in a gulag in Siberia. I said, Your Honor, can I say something? Yeah, if you want to. My lawyer said, don't speak, you don't know the rules. I said, I'm going to speak. So I remember Rupa Goswami, he was also in jail. And he used some diplomacy to get out. He bribed the caretaker. So I thought, I'll use some diplomacy. And I said, Your Honor, I want to thank you. He said, what? I said, I want to thank you for holding this trial on Sunday. They did it so the newspapers wouldn't come and see that, this foreigner was being misjudged, mistrial. So I said, you've come here on Sunday, you're elderly, you probably could have spent your weekend with your grandchildren. And he went, yeah. I said, thank you, Your Honor. And I said, this is a great country, at least in diplomacy here. This is a great country. And, I've been coming since 1988. I've distributed a lot of food in Chechnya during the war and in Siberia during freezing winters. We have a Food for Life program. I've done that. I've tried to spread goodwill here. I respect the population. I didn't speak about politicians. I respect the populations. I have many friends here, and I'm proud of all of you that you're a great economy. He looked at me and said to the person next to him, bring the conviction, bring the how do you call it, the sentence, bring the sentence. He took a pen and everyone's looking like, what did he do? He said, you don't have to go to prison for 2 years. You've got 24 hours to get out of this country or I'm going to throw you in the gulag. I think I ran faster than any Olympic athlete out of that courtroom. And I ran back to where the devotees were. They were having a festival, and I got on the stage and gave a lecture. I wasn't supposed to do that. Led a kirtan. Mari, get out of this country. So we drove to Sochi, and all along there were bombs going off because Ukraine was nearby, and the bombs were coming very easily. Got on the plane in Sochi, flew to Istanbul, flew to Delhi, and where all the passengers are coming off the plane, right? Come down, and I fall flat on the ground and start kissing the ground. Swamiji, what are you doing? It's a long story. So anyway, with that dhoti and those two blessings, my God, every disciple would like personal instructions from the spiritual master. I'm so grateful to Srila Prabhupada. So then I went to France, and voilà, je peux penser maintenant, c'est bien, parce que je connais beaucoup, je connais le monde. I spoke French, I learned French. A little bit. You'd say todo, a little bit. And we built up a yatra. To make a long story short, Prabhupada came, he came one year after he had installed Radha Parasishwara. And the temple president said, whoever can sell the most books will have the privilege to wash Prabhupada's feet when he comes to our new temple. So there's a lot of French boys and girls. They speak really good French. I'm kind of stumbling around. But I was determined that when Prabhupada came for that visit to France, to Paris, I wanted to wash his feet. I wanted to wash his feet. So I went out with one of my friends. I learned a mantra. We had 1 month. I left at 4:30 every morning. I get up and chant my rounds from 2:30 to 4. When Mongol Arctic started, I went in the underground metro with small books. Bonjour, madame. Je suis un moine. S'il vous plaît, give money. I forgot most of the mantra then. And I'd collect until 8 o'clock at night. So for 1 month, I didn't see the sun. I didn't see the sun for 1 month. I became very pale. I didn't see the sun for 1 month. And lo and behold, I won the marathon. And my friend who was French, he came in second. So we collected more money. We bought a big silver, in those days, a big silver bowl with a silver pitcher. And the day came, and Prabhupada came and saw the deities. He sat down before class, put his lotus feet out. Wow. And my friend held the bowl, and I poured the rose water with rose petals, just the right temperature, just warm like that, on his feet, and massaged his feet like that. And then we filled it up, and the temple president said, that's enough water. But we had a plan. We had a plan. And we, as soon as the Guru Puja was over and the foot bathing was over, me and my friend Bhugarba, we grabbed that big pot of Charnamrita and we ran upstairs. Everyone would say, wait, you have to throw the nectar, bye-bye. And I'd stolen the temple president's key. And I made a double, and I opened the office, and we rushed in, put it down, and I locked it from the inside. Boom, boom, boom. You could hear all the brahmacharis bump, hitting the other side of the door trying to get in. And we sat down, and we both bought stainless steel cups and a special silver cup. And I said, let me serve you the Charnamrita, the lotus feet of His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Yes, please. Then he said, let me serve you the nectar from the Lord. And it took us about 45 minutes. The kirtan was still roaring. And I swear, I looked about 7 months. I was so big. And Bhagavad too. And there were 2 drops left in the... So I went like this, and he went like that. And then I opened the door. Like 10 brahmacharis. Where's the nectar? Oh, I don't know. So the next year that Prabhupada came, we received him, brought him in the temple. He saw Radha Parasishwara, and I could see he was overwhelmed with emotion. And at that time, we had Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I remembered the little boy who wanted Shakti Gopal to stand as witness. When he came back to Vrindavan, he told the Lord, my dear Lord, you're not a statue. You're directly the son of Maharaj Nanda. So I tried to see the deity like that. So Prabhupada was looking, and it looked like Krishna was looking at him. It was a very intense moment. Then Prabhupada went down and sat on the Vyasasana again, and I was sitting even closer, like right there, because it was a crowded temple room. Prabhupada first took the silver cup with water, and he went, and it went straight to his mouth. I That's not the law of gravity. You ask many of Prabhupada's disciples when he would drink how did he do that? He would and the water go and then it'd stop and then he'd finish. And then when he played kartals, I don't know. It's just everything Prabhupada did was in full love of Godhead. Every iota of his body, every thought, his whole soul was completely dedicated to Radha and Krishna. So he sat on the Vyasasana. That's how slow. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivardhari Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Manachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi. And he stopped. And he froze and he started shaking like this. And I said to Nipa, Prabhupada's having a stroke. The devotee said, no, Prabhupada's gone into samadhi. He's in ecstasy. And sure enough, Prabhupada started perspiring, he was shaking, and the tears were going like this. You know, usually tears come like that, right? The tears were coming, we call this in Yuttari, sannyasis. The tears were going like this. And I was thinking, I'm in the presence of someone who's experiencing prem, pure love of God. We always talk about, you know, the pure love of God. I thought I'd never see it till I got back to Godhead. So many different types of love. I'd seen great sadhus who had some affection. I could see Prabhupada's experiencing the 8 symptoms of ecstatic love for God. He very rarely did it because he doesn't want people to follow him because of the ecstasy. He wants the general people to follow him for the knowledge he's giving. But there he was. And the tears were coming like that. I just watched. I said, thank you, Krishna. You've given me the best spiritual preceptor in the 3 worlds and ever existed. You know, the disciple, he thinks this spiritual master is the best example of a devotee. So, and then suddenly Prabhupada stopped and he realized that he'd gone into ecstasy. So he looked around, he said, that's all. What a Bhagavatam class. He said, that's all. And you could hear a pin drop. He got up and he went upstairs and we just sat there. He went upstairs, even his secretary couldn't move. He just went, that's like he just ascended to Goloka or something. He went to his room and we stayed like that for like 10 minutes. And we didn't know what to do. What else was there to do? We'd seen the culmination of pure devotion to Krishna. We'd seen the essence of it, you know. O Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain. I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I saw it. The verse became personified. So that afternoon, the girls were cleaning Prabhupada's apartment, but there's a lot to be done, and Prabhupada's clothes were there. And one of the girls said, can anybody help us and wash Prabhupada's clothes? I said, I will. No, it's for the girls. I said, no, I'll do it. They gave him to me. I took the clothes and I saw that spot where Prabhupada's tears had made all wet. So what I did is I went to my room and I locked the door and I sucked on those tears until it became dry. That's probably the only reason I'm still here. Prabhupada's prem, I sucked on it. You know, you can suck, and it became dry like that. Hare Krishna. One time Prabhupada came down to give class, and there was one devotee, Bhagarbha, he used to keep Prabhupada's slippers when he went into the temple room. I was so jealous. I want to hold those slippers. So one day, Prabhupada, or Bhagarbha, he was late, so Prabhupada came down. I sat right there. I looking, beg, borrow, steal, but get the mercy, right? So I sat and Prabhupada came down, I took his slippers off and he went in the temple room. I held him like this. No one was going to take them from me, especially Bhugarba. So then, after the class, Prabhupada came, and then he stood there, and I put his slippers on, and I made sure that I touched the undersoles of his feet. So he rubbed my head. He said, "Good boy." Hey, that's all you need. If the pure devotee, Lord Shiva is just looking for the glance of Srimati Radharani, Radhakripa Katakshikam, the pure devotee. So I thought, okay, life's good. And then Prabhupada came to our new Mayapur community, our farm community, and there was an initiation outside. And then afterwards, he came into the chateau, and he was in his room, but he left his chadar on the Vyasasan outside by the oak tree. So someone said, "Can someone take Prabhupada's chadar upstairs?" But everyone wanted to eat prasadam. No. I said, I'll take it. I can fast for that. So I took the chadar and I went to Prabhupada's room. This time I knew how to enter. So I knocked. There was no noise. Knocked. So I thought maybe Prabhupada's sleeping. So I opened the door and I came in, and Prabhupada was standing at the other end of the room by this big window watching devotees take prasad. Something so simple as that, taking prasad. He didn't know I was in the room. So he turned around and, before he saw me, he said out loud, and he was crying, "Let them take prasad," like that. He was crying, "Chadhur vidhashri bhagavat prasado." The spiritual master takes great pleasure in seeing the disciple honor prasadam. Again, we're hungry. That was really good. Pure devotees honor prasadam as Krishna's saliva, as his mercy. And when he saw his disciples taking prasadam, he became purified. It brought tears to his eyes. And he turned around and he said, like this, "Let them take prasad." Like that. I think that's enough for tonight. I have a few more stories if we have more, but please welcome Prabhupada in your hearts. It's not that the Prabhupada disciples have more access or easier access to Prabhupada, no. The full mercy is there for anyone who joins this international society for Krishna consciousness. Everyone has equal opportunity. Of course, through the disciplic succession, but it's like, there's the powerhouse where the wire comes, big wire, and it goes 5 kilometers to the factory or something to give it electricity. Anywhere that you go into that wire, you're going to get the same potency. It's not that it decreases as it gets towards the powerhouse. No, anywhere you go into it, you're going to get that electricity. So anytime you join this movement and you're serving the founder Acharya through your chosen spiritual master, you're getting the full mercy. So take full advantage. Take shelter of his divine grace. Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Chant his prana mantra, beg for his mercy, and beg for service to his lotus feet. Because Prabodhananda Saraswati says in Chaitanya Chandamrita that by serving the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one gets the mercy of Srimati Radharani's lotus feet. So that's the key, service. Work now, samadhi later. We have to work hard, establish all of Prabhupada's desires in this world, and when that's done, we can come before him and say, "Srila Prabhupada, mission accomplished, what's my next service?" "All right, come on home." And Prabhupada told my godbrother Dhananjaya, he was getting a massage, Prabhupada, and Dhananjaya was massaging him. And he turned over and he said, "Dhananjaya, when we get back to the spiritual world, we'll all recognize each other." What? You look around, we'll all recognize each other. Then he said, "But you won't recognize me." And Dhananjaya said, "Oh," Prabhupada laughed. He said, "Because I won't be an old man, I'll be forever a little boy." Hare Krishna. Thank you. It's 10 after 10. If you're doing something you don't like, time goes very slow. But if you're doing something you like, time goes very quickly. So sweet dreams. We'll see you tomorrow. Right, well.